Thank you, President Scott and the City Council.
Good evening.
My name is Danny. I've been a registered nurse at Johns Hopkins for almost 7 years. I work in the medical intensive care unit where I see some of the most vulnerable and sickest patients in the city of Baltimore. I care for patients with liver failure, kidney failure, infectious sepsis, overdose, drug withdrawals, and other illnesses. By the time my patient reaches the medical intensive care unit, many have already experienced multiple readmissions throughout the year. I'm here today because I am a patient advocate, which means that in order for me to most effectively care for my patients at the bedside, I also need to make sure that my patient have a healthy environment to go home to and to have support system in the Baltimore community. As a city, we need to fund programs that promote health access and resource. We need to invest in education. We need to provide dignified jobs. We need to ensure that the social and economic fabric of Baltimore is strong in order to address why many of our patients in our community end up in the medical intensive care unit and to provide them an attainable path to healing. The clearest ways to do this is to renegotiate a pilot agreement where the wealthiest nonprofits in Baltimore pay their fair share. As a nurse for the largest of these nonprofits, I know that what Hopkins save each year with the current pilot program agreement is not reflected in staffing, equipment, nurse retention, and other critical aspects of patient care. Over the years, many units have been forced to do more with less, even as our community gets sicker and sicker. All too often, I see new nurses working the best they can with the best they have, but end up getting burnout and leaving within 1 to 2 years. So when I hear people talk about how these hospitals bring opportunity and new jobs to the workforce here, we call it a transplant city. They come here, get their name on their resume, and leave. Where I do see Johns Hopkins invest is paying anti-union consultants millions of dollars to stop my colleagues and I from unionizing to address these issues. We may be understaffed on our units, but we know that Hopkins hired a team of over a dozen highly priced union busters to stop nurses from speaking up about these same issues. Hopkins has a duty to provide more to the Baltimore community, including doing right by the nurses who are standing up for this community. As a Hopkins nurse and patient advocate, I support the reopening and renegotiation of the pilot agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, President Scott, and the rest of the City Council for having us. My name is Josh Pickett, and I am a nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital. I have worked at Hopkins going on 4 years, and I work on an inpatient psychiatric unit, as well as the psychiatric emergency department. I take care of patients with substance use disorders and mental illnesses that range from suicide to bipolar to schizophrenia. These patients are directly and negatively impacted by nonprofits such as Johns Hopkins' exorbitantly low property tax rate. These negative impacts can be seen in the community by the rise in addiction rates, an increasing number of homeless individuals, schools with no heat, lead-contaminated water, and abandoned houses around the city. All of these and more can be ameliorated with reopening and renegotiating the pilot program with a focus on equity and justice. The mission of Johns Hopkins Hospital Medicine is to improve the health of the community and the world by setting a standard of excellence in medical education, research, and clinical care. I agree that the staff at Johns Hopkins give world-class care and do their best to enhance and improve the health of everyone they see. However, upper administration's sweetheart deal to reduce its property taxes has a destructive impact to the health of the city and its residents. I heard mention earlier that this deal was because of the services that these nonprofits give back to the community. Let me list a few other things Hopkins has been doing while it has been saving money by not paying its fair share. Suing patients. It receives millions of dollars from the state in charity care to provide money to people who cannot afford to pay for their medical expenses. Instead of fully paying for all of these people, all of this money is saved, thrown back into the profit stream, and instead they are suing their patients. The number one group of patients that they do sue are Hopkins employees. Along with this, an increase in upper administration pay that ranges from 45 to 110% from 2010 to 2014. So while they're suing patients, They're also increasing their pay from 45 to 110%. Executives. Eliminating the pensions for its employees, reducing its health care benefits, and maintaining stagnant wages which are not equal to comparable university and research institutions. As Danny spoke earlier, there are millions being spent on union busters, such as Little or Mendelsohn, which is President Trump's preferred union busting firm to settle labor disputes, to stop RNs from advocating for patients and increasing the safety for Baltimore residents when they come into the hospital. I also heard mentioned earlier about future crisis services. This is admirable, but what happens when this isn't profitable? We know what will happen. It will shut such facilities down like it has shut facilities down already. In example, it has closed the detox unit that it used to have and consolidated it with my unit. So people who are going through withdrawal now have to be on inpatient units with acutely psychotic individuals rather than having a unit to themselves because that unit was no longer profitable.
Biggie, 30 seconds.
Thank you. It has also just recently this year shut down its psychiatric its schizophrenia day hospital because it was not profitable as well. As a patient advocate, I support reopening the pilot agreement so that Hopkins and other wealthy nonprofits can contribute more to the city of Baltimore. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your work.